Hi, this is Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Here to talk about some post-fight thoughts on the Carl Froch Andre Dirrell match, and to also talk about the upcoming matchup, time permitting, between Arthur Abraham and Andre Dirrell. Now, let me give you just some background. The fight took place in the United Kingdom and was not shown here in the United States in California live. I knew the outcome of the fight before I saw the fight. I also was in touch with several viewers on my channel page on YouTube and got their thoughts on the fight. Many of these viewers were people from the UK who either were at the fight or who saw the fight as it happened. Okay, I had predicted before the fight that Carl Froch would win by knockout. By the time I saw the fight, I knew that Froch had won by decision. So I sat down to watch the fight. I was expecting to see the more experienced Carl Froch time Andre Dirrell, keep him at the end of very hard punches. I was expecting to see Carl Froch land left hooks, an occasional uppercut. I was expecting to see Andre Dirrell have some stamina problems, as he was before a different crowd. He had never fought in Nottingham before, Froch's hometown, and he had never been to the 11th or 12th rounds before, and I knew that Froch applies a lot of pressure. What I saw absolutely astonished me because I didn't see that at all. Although I had predicted that Carl Froch would win the fight, on my scorecard he didn't. In fact, he lost the fight by a very wide margin. There seems to be some revisionist history that I hope fans are aware of and can look at the fight themselves to see exactly what happened. If they saw the same fight that I saw, the same fight, by the way, that USA Today saw, then they would see that Andre Dirrell won this fight by a comfortable margin. The revisionist history that Dirrell wasn't aggressive enough completely ignores the several hard counters that Dirrell landed throughout the fight. In fact, quite frankly, Dirrell not only landed more punches than Carl Froch, Dirrell actually landed, from what I saw, and I don't have CompuStat numbers, but Dirrell landed the harder shots in the fight. In fact, several times in the fight, Dirrell actually had Carl Froch turned around. He was able to completely neutralize Froch's hook, which seemed to be thrown without any real effectiveness for all 12 rounds. And then he was able to hit Froch with very hard shots, and Froch didn't do a good job of covering up. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a Froch hater. I picked him in the fight. I also picked Froch against Jermaine Taylor. But it was astonishing just how limited Froch looked when faced with a fighter who, quite frankly, had better foot movement, had better body movement, had better hand speed, and had much better countering ability. In fact, the fight was so one-sided, in my opinion, that there was a moment where Froch got Andre Dirrell in a corner. Froch threw several punches at Dirrell's head, and Dirrell was ducking down, and Dirrell dodged all of them. Then what happened next is important. Dirrell comes up, and he doesn't counter with a jab. He actually comes up and counters with a left hook that hits Froch flush in the face. Now with counterpunchers, and we've seen this with Arthur Abraham, compare and contrast Abraham's first fight against Edison Miranda with his second fight against Edison Miranda. Once a counterpuncher cracks your code, and you can tell by the quality of the counters that that counterpuncher lands, once he cracks that code, then the more rounds he's in the ring with you, the more effective he's going to be. So, for example, by the time Arthur Abraham, who got his jaw broken in 2 places by Edison Miranda in their first fight, by the time Arthur Abraham fought the rematch, he had figured out Edison Miranda, who of course is an over-aggressive fighter who leaves himself open. And so, of course, that second fight was really round 13 of the first fight, and once Arthur Abraham cracks your code, it's over. Well, here in the Carl Froch fight, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at that fight, it's clear that Andre Dirrell, in the latter rounds of that fight, had cracked Carl Froch's code. You can tell because Dirrell actually starts landing harder punches. The people who think that Dirrell wasn't throwing enough, wasn't fighting enough, should really sit there, watch the fight again, and ask themselves, who landed more punches? Don't penalize the guy who landed more punches. Also, they should ask themselves, who landed the harder punches? Carl Froch, in one of the worst boxing interviews I've seen, after the fight, was complaining that Dirrell didn't stand in front of him. I got news for Carl Froch. Does he really think Sugar Ray Robinson stood in front of opponents? Does he really think young Cassius Clay stood in front of opponents? This is boxing. It's not fighting. Okay? What Andre Dirrell did was put on a boxing clinic. Let's talk about the scores. Okay? First, let me say this. The referee was a complete joke. This guy allowed Carl Froch to do everything dirty. Andre Dirrell at one point gets thrown to the canvas by Carl Froch, and there's no warning to Carl Froch, right? This is terrible. Then, other times, Carl Froch is clearly hitting Andre Dirrell behind the head. Froch is using his elbows. Froch fought a very dirty fight, and yet no points were taken away from Carl Froch. 1 point was taken away from Dirrell without any reason whatsoever, from what I could see. Think about that point. Let's look at the scoring. One judge gave the fight to Dirrell by 1 round. Well, if you add back in the point that was deducted from Andre Dirrell, that judge would have given Dirrell a 2-round victory, 7-5 on his card. The other 2 judges, they were listed in the book as giving Froch a 3-round advantage. We know that's not true, because if you add back in the point that was wrongly deducted from Andre Dirrell, then they have Froch winning by only 1 round each, right? They have it 7-5 in favor of Froch. Let me tell you, USA Today had Dirrell winning 117-110. Even though I took Froch in the fight, I myself had Dirrell winning by at least 3 rounds. It was debatable whether some other rounds were scored as draws. I thought Dirrell made Froch look amateurish. Again, this is boxing. It's not fighting. A fighter who has inferior hand speed compared to his opponent can't come into the fight, get hit more than he hits the other guy, right? Look bad, be successfully countered with not just jabs but hooks, and then complain that the other guy didn't fight enough. That's a fiction. Andre Dirrell got robbed in this fight, and I say that as someone who picked Carl Froch in it. So, fight fans, I do hope that you take a look at the fight. It's always a great idea, a few days after the hype dies down, to give these fights a second look. Andre Dirrell impressed me. Quite frankly, I got this prediction wrong, because even though they gave it to Froch,